On the home stretch. This is the best part of the day. Actually, I'm seeing for my supper now. I have to do some work. We're going to talk about, I guess, I'm not going to use the word recruiting, but the competition for talent. It's something that, regardless of what job you're in, whether you're a fund manager, researcher, advisor, no matter what industry you're in, it's such a difficult place to be with inflation and people's perspective of roles and jobs and what career paths they should do. We've had a big shake-up in our industry with a massive disruption to pathways to financial planning. So I might get to the stage, Alisdair Barr, originally from Perth but now in Sydney, with a Striver, which was before the Grad Mentor, but it's still combined together, isn't it? Still, they do both?
Striver now.
It's all Striver now. But I guess you've put hundreds of people, students, through recruitment programs and got them roles in jobs, so very hands-on in that role.
Correct.
Now, by the marvels of technology, we're going to get I'll get his surname right, so I'll probably start the Matthew Swieconek.
Perfect.
Is that right?
Perfect, absolutely perfect. Hit it first time, nailed it. Well done.
Look at that. Got my V's and my W's the right way around. Okay, Alisdair, what we might do is talk about macroeconomics, thematics, demographics, compliance, all those. You know what I mean?
Sounds like that.
Let's just talk about what you do in your role and how you get people in. And I'll get Matthew from Findex to talk about some of the practical challenges of being an advisor in the wealth industry. So let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about talent, what's happening in the world of advisors and anyone recruiting people, and what are you seeing in your world?
Yeah, and I realise I've been telling everybody that the reason the room is all full here is because of this, but I also realise the next thing after this is a drink.
Drinks,
so
yeah.
we won't hold them up. Completely fooled by that. Yeah, but so I don't really need to go back and talk about the numbers in the profession. We've seen 29,000 go down to under 17,000. We know that's been a problem, well documented. But what I wanted to talk about, we work with purely new entrants to the profession, and that obviously includes a lot of university students as well as some career changes. And we talk about the profession and the more broader industry as well, because we do some work with some of the investment managers and the like. But that number's declined. What we're also seeing is about 300 students finishing an approved degree per year, and the Advisor Ratings report 12 months ago said that only 50% of them are entering the profession or entering the job. So we've got this mass exodus. We've got 300 studying an approved degree, 50% of them coming into the profession. You guys are all smart enough to do the back of the beer coaster calculation there. That's a bit of a mess. But then just stepping back as well, I've been telling people that I don't have an HR or recruitment background, but I've been doing this for 10 years now, so at some stage I've got to say that I do. But people that do say this is this perfect storm, and you've kind of got this, they call it the Great Resignation or whatever, but it's a combination of 2 years of people sticking in jobs for security, net outflows of international travel numbers month on month, which we haven't seen before the last 2 years. We've now seen students going overseas for jobs when they finish their degrees, but we haven't seen a mass influx of international students coming in. And you might think that international students don't necessarily take up the professional roles, but they take up the coffee shops and the retail and the hospitality roles, which are now being quite attractive for young people to take. So we have all that stuff going on. We've also got this issue with offshoring. Not so much in business process stuff that we probably use in professional services firms, but technology and the likes has been brought back onshore because of some problems with some geographical risks and so forth. So all of these things kind of create this perfect storm of this talent bottleneck. And the 25 to 45-year-old professional services person globally is the most attractive talent pool there is. So looking at grads is a really interesting thing. The other thing that's interesting too, about 5 years ago, I had the chance to speak to somebody who was working at BlackRock. He was managing a team at BlackRock in New York. And he said that he had this conversation about their gun, right? So they'd hired this gun out of Harvard University, who was now 18 months into the dream job for a Harvard University grad on Wall Street in this big investment firm. And their best employee had just left. And this was 5 years ago, and this problem just got worse. But where do you think this person went? Have a guess. Probably cooler than Google, Snapchat. So what I sort of back then I was like, okay, hang on, we're losing, this used to be the most attractive place for people I don't know what Snapchat is. Somebody, you might know what it is. Someone might want to stand up and show us the account, how it works. But back then there was an issue
like
saying...
Tinder?
I don't know, mate. What's Tinder like? Unreal. But then this was the problem back then, and now we're seeing a real kind of heightened exercise. And the Financial Review this graduate season posted 10 graduate opportunities, right? And we had Boston Consulting Group offering $130,000 for a 21-year-old straight out of university, plus a sign-on bonus and a relocation bonus, so it doesn't matter where they come from. And so this is the sort of competition that we see at Atlassian and Google offering everybody in first year a job in 3 years' time for when they come out, guaranteed. Tesla's struggling a little bit maybe, but this is the type of organisations that are really, mopping up this graduate market. So it really puts pressure on the talent supply as well. And so I think there's some problems in that, and I'll pass over to
Matthew in
Matt in a sec. But we're seeing kind of three. Actually, I might just pass over to you, Matt, now, because otherwise I'll just keep going. But I'm sure we'll be able to weave this next bit in. Yeah.
So Matthew, you're the practical side. You're seeing in your wealth. What are you seeing in the wealth industry as being advice?
It's an interesting time, Mike and Alisdair. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yep.
Great. Look, it's certainly from a practical perspective, it's probably no different from what your audience is experiencing at the moment. Anybody who's out there recruiting currently or who has been in the last probably 6 to 8 months, where we've really seen the market tighten significantly. At a couple of ends, we're actively recruiting and have been for some time at the senior partner type end, but also at that associate type end, and we're finding that it's a very dry well that we're trying to fish in, and it's a finite or reducing pool of talent, as Alisdair referred to earlier on. So basic laws of supply and demand are coming into play. Obviously, we're seeing practically salary expectations increase significantly. I've had a couple of prospective candidates recently that have been seeking sort of 30% above where our expected range was at. But as a consequence, we've probably had to recalibrate our offers as a result. Now, what we're also seeing is that we're getting a much more discerning customer, if that makes sense. So we're getting people who aren't just looking purely at the base salary. There's a lot of inquisition around what our bonus structure looks like, what the culture of the business is like, what the longer term equity structure within the business, their progression within it, their career development. There's much more of a due diligence process that they are going through. And in actual fact, I just had a call earlier on from a candidate, and this is a fourth meeting, which is something that's been unusual in the past, particularly in my last 20-year career. But it is certainly a sign of the times that people are becoming much more discerning around that. But what I'm also seeing is that it's forcing the hand of the dealer group that the prospects are coming from, whereby there's a lot of counter offers that are coming back because, and there may be some of you out there in the audience recognising the same thing as us, that it's a tight talent market. So we need to do what we need to do to retain these talented individuals, and it's there's not a litany of them as there used to be in the past, and it's something that we're trying to combat through a number of different methods. We're looking at really trying to take a more grassroots approach to the way that we are recruiting. We know that we've got a number of advisors, for example, that are putting a full stop on their career in the next few years owing to FASIA or increased obligations, compliance obligations and so forth, so that they're getting a bit tired and ready to leave the industry. So we're trying to take a little bit more of a grassroots approach and really start to get into that graduate market, Alisdair, that you're referring to.
Yeah, and it's not all a train wreck. I'm just always cognizant that we sort of paint this bad picture, right? Because there's solutions to it, like Matt was just saying. But what we sort of see is there's 4 different ways. So we go to these forums and we hear, virtually go to these forums and we hear this, well, we don't want to train them because we train them and they leave and then they get counter-offered and then they get given a whole bunch of money after they've done a PY, or we want people that are PY ready. So just imagine, right, if somebody's hiring someone to enter a professional year straight away, so they're hiring someone that's been operating in a firm for a couple of years, they know customer service, they know X-Plan, whatever it might be, and then they go, right, we're going to hire you and we're going to put you through a professional year. Now, if that relationship gets a bit prickly, 3 or 6 months through, in the normal world, your probation period would look after it. But in this case, that individual is going to stick at that role for the 12 months, get their PY, and then leave. Right? So there's this higher propensity for a bad outcome because your courting period is nothing. So what we see, I think there's like 4 ways to recruit new entrants into the profession, or early entrants into the profession. One is take someone that's 2 or 3 years already authorised, could bring some clients, could be revenue generating straight away, and we think that's a very viable strategy. It's not where we support businesses, but that's always going to be there and we think that's part of it. What we do is grow your own, bring them out of university or while they're at university, spend some time, rotate them around the business, get to know them, then everybody invests in each other to enter professional year a couple of years down the track. That's where we think you get the best outcome, because otherwise you have this thing of entering into PY, then they didn't like it as much and they leave at the end of PY, and then there's also firms that are sitting there offering big dollars for people coming out the back of PY.
Doing that, isn't there a whole lot of education around the advisor or the practice owner now to rethink how they actually recruit people? Because the old days, you did the probation period, and they either worked or didn't work. Now it's a whole lot of that new engagement. I've been involved in a few practices where the manager's a fantastic financial advisor, they're a great guy or girl, they really know their stuff, but they're horrible as a manager, and they just have no culture. And you see the staff turning over every 6, 12 months, through the door. And we can't train this guy, I guess he's beyond it now, but what do you do for those people? How do you get back to people and teach them the stuff?
And Google and Snapchat have got culture. They've got exciting work, they've got different work, they've got work that's engaging and cool and makes a difference. And I think as an industry, technology has kind of painted this picture of the greater good that they provide. Like, I don't know many professions that have a greater good as much as financial advice and helping people achieve what's important to them, right? That's the thing that people say to us, the Royal Commission's stopping new entrants. I don't think that stops a 21-year-old. They don't even know what the Royal Commission is, or a 19-year-old. So I was saying earlier, there was no 20-year-old watching the Royal Commission on YouTube like the rest of us. No one. Listening to it while I was driving the car, that wasn't happening. So that's not what they're not coming for. They just don't know what a great place is. The social purpose it makes, the difference and impact it has on communities, how flexible it can be, how complex it can be, and how much of it, and the fact that you can make a decent living.
So Matthew, on more practical terms in the actual practice, I see the role of the client service manager, or the person who knows all about X-Plan, where the client files are, who the clients are. They actually know more sometimes than the advisor does. If they lose that person, that's a key person in the business. It's almost impossible to recruit someone to replace them. They've been around since the day the business often started. Those sort of people, and where do you draw the salary line? Because they probably deserve a lot more than being paid, but you can't pay them because the business isn't generating that.
It's a perennial issue, Mike, and don't tell our advisors this, but we often say that the client services team are the most important people within our business, because they're there to support the advisors and the work that they're doing for the clients. So you're absolutely right, they're the backbone of everything that we do. But coming back to, I guess, what Alisdair was saying beforehand, what we're endeavouring to do, because don't forget, this isn't just a talent issue that we've got in the advisor ranks. The same issue is applying across client services and paraplanning. It's really across the board. So I guess what we're looking to do with those graduates who are seeking to come into a professional year at some stage is move them initially into that client services type role. And I guess where we're at somewhat of an advantage, just to blow our horn a little bit, is that we do have we don't have individual sole practitioners who run their own individual businesses. So we do have a lot of senior partners who have the time to mentor young staff when they're coming through, and that's a real selling proposition from our perspective, in that we've got a defined career pathway. So long as they hit certain criteria, they'll move from that client services role into an associate role, into an advisor role, so on and so forth. So as a consequence, we're finding that is a real attraction to people. Plus, they get the option of the availability of being buddied up with a mentor. But where that line is from a client services perspective, that's a very difficult one. That's rising in concert with probably what we're seeing out there in the advisor market at the moment, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Well, while we have a bit of a quick pause, you open to the floor. Do you have any questions while we're going on about this whole? Yep, over here. Yep.
Just interested.
Yep.
Thanks. You talked about there's 300 graduates and 150 don't even come into the industry. Is there any reason why that is? Is that because they're already starting to think, oh, the culture's not good here? And then the 150 that do stay and want to progress in the industry, why? What's in it for them? What are they seeing that the others are not seeing?
Yeah, so the numbers are always funny with new entrants, right? I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. All I know is for 10 years we've been in lectures and seen the numbers dwindling, right? But it's interesting, there was this moment this year, face-to-face in Melbourne, and this student who was doing an accounting, financial planning double major. And it's taken me 10 years to kind of have this aha moment. And this student said, can I come into the financial planning industry in 6 years' time when I'm 30? And I said, I think we'd love to have you. And he said, that's good because I want to go and use my accounting degree and go and audit and all these different, and tax and all these different things, and I can do that. But the accounting profession won't have me as a graduate at 30, but you guys will. And so with an accounting degree, this student's gone, well, as Meister, I can check all this different stuff out. I can go all over this place, don't know where I'll end up, that'll be fine. With a financial planning degree, I have to go in to be a financial planner, and that's kind of where it's pigeonholed me, and it's 3 years in. So we've taken someone down 3 years to be a brain surgeon, and they don't like blood. Right, so so they kind of it's a big commitment, right? So your question was like, where do the 150 go? They don't come in because they're either doing it for their own use or it's part of their job, or they take off backpacking, or they don't get an opportunity and they get picked up by a bank or something, and they go down that track, and the other 150 are given a good go by a great firm that gives them the chance. And I think that's part of it. Like, as professionals, we need to think, how do we take young people into our role that might be 2 or 3 years before they're revenue generating, but actually put a calculator together to say how much time and effort and energy they save so we can employ them. We need to have a good crack at employing young people in the profession. We all need to do that as a responsibility. But yeah, there's definitely some conundrums with how the education's structured and so forth. If we could be more general. And if you think, sorry, Michael, if you think there's 300 that are coming out with an approved degree, there are 190,000 university graduates with a business degree in Australia a year. So that's across accounting, finance, economics, marketing, PR, 300 of which are in financial planning. So there's where part of the piece of this puzzle that's important, it sits right there, I think.
I think the issue is they just don't understand our industry. I mean, we know that, it's obvious, but it is this. I have a son who's just finished a law degree, and he said, Dad, what do you do again? Well, I'm in financial services, son. He said, what exactly do you do? I look after advisors, and I had trouble explaining what I even do. I look after AFSLs, do compliance and stuff. So I had difficulty selling him what I do as a job. If you're a true financial planner, you're probably a bit easier, but I think it's still so murky what we do, and even the words still a little bit tainted from the Royal Commission. So I think we've got a bit of work to do as an industry to get people realising, as you said, it's a very, very important career path that people can take. And the big and, which we never think about, you can become totally self-employed. So how long did it take as an accountant to become totally, or a lawyer or a doctor? It takes a lot, but you can become self-employed a bit earlier and have those other benefits, which are lifestyle benefits, which can improve. So Matthew, do you want to comment on that at all?
Look, certainly, Mike, when you were mentioning the knowledge of what it is that we do, I mean, we certainly have an image problem. There's a knowledge and an image problem. There's still that lack of understanding. Yes, there are many of us that have been in this caper for over 20 odd years, but there's still not a great deal of acknowledgement or knowledge as to what it is specifically out there in the market that we do. Most people would think that we're just investment advisors or pseudo fund managers, something of that nature. So I think there's an education component, but also the PR, the image of our industry has been dented significantly, as we know. We've been the whipping boys for a long period of time, but I feel like that is starting to change. And obviously there's a lot of work being done by IMAP and others in terms of trying to change the perspective But it comes back to what I was saying. I think if you look at the successful organisations out there that do it well, down in Victoria at the moment, off to the footy tonight, look at the AFL. They do it successfully at the grassroots level. They grow it up from the kids at the very early age, and they get out there and start to educate. I guess where we're trying to do the same thing is to get into the universities and start to get a bit of brand awareness out there across the graduates across many universities, and piggyback off what the accountants have been doing for years in our business, which is taking people as either interns or freshly out of university. I think that's the way that we're going to spread the message collectively as an industry as to what we do and how good we are.
Mm-hmm. With other questions?
I've got a question, Matthew, primarily for you, which is, COVID has changed our whole working pattern, into a working from home mode. How's that playing out in how do you see it playing out in the future in Findex? I mean, how do you think it's sort of changing the relative attractiveness of what we offer?
Well, look, it's interesting. I describe us as a work from home business, and we occasionally head into the office. So we are fully dynamic. So employees really have the option of working 5 days a week from home or 5 days a week in the office. Now, what we're finding is people are gravitating towards a natural mean, so probably 2 or 3 days in the office and likewise at home. We're finding that is an enormous selling point from our perspective, because we do have a big regional footprint, of course. We're spread across 100 locations regionally in Australia, but increasingly people have now set up their lives to be closer to home. So to give them the opportunity to primarily work from home is a big one, and that's where we are certainly attracting new people.
On another subject we talked about very briefly earlier was offshoring and outsourcing and all that other stuff for staff. I see that coming in more and more. It's got a little bit better. Well, what are you seeing in your world? Is that something that can be part of, or how?
I think, yeah, so I talked about the 4 different places we should be recruiting. I think offshoring's like every firm should be looking at outsourcing, whether you're offshore or onshore, whatever. Yeah, so yeah, just taking jobs out of your existing team and putting them somewhere else, sort of low-hanging fruit, repeatable stuff, where it's it's really clear. If a firm says, we want someone to fill in this paperwork and do that over and over again and never want to sort of progress and so forth, then that should be something that should be outsourced, right? Because, you can't take a graduate or someone's got an education necessarily, because naturally they want to sort of grow, and that's why they went to university. So those roles should be outsourced. The only thing that you lose, though, one of the things you lose is the training ground and getting new entrants and people to understand the paperwork and be the best at processing insurance and so forth. But I think it's definitely one of those things, if you can take them off the table and give more, especially growing people around your firm. If you've got a university grad and you put them in the corner and said, fill in those applications for the next 12 months, that can be pretty demoralising. But if you can say, cut your teeth on that, and we're going to take that off you, and then we're going to get you into more client-facing stuff, I think it's got to roll.
And I do
it's got a place, I think. Sorry to interject, but I think we certainly agree with Alisdair. I mean, we use it as a complement, not a supplement to a lot of our support. So during busy periods, if we have a need where our workload exceeds our resourcing, then we've got the ability to outsource that to existing arrangements that we have in place. But certainly it doesn't replace our need for existing client service staff or paraplanning or associate staff within our business. It's really just allowing us to dial up and down as needed as our workload requires.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. The PY people I see in my world, and maybe others see it too, they're either family members that are coming through, they're either very, very, very close friends of the business or been in the business for a little while. I'm not seeing too many complete, absolute cold strangers coming in and putting them on. Maybe there are, but I don't see that, and we're not seeing a heap anyway. What are you seeing in your mix?
Well, I mean, that's a sort of typical kind of small business mentality. You hire the people that you know. Yeah. They also become some of the best train wrecks, hiring people you know. There's no arm's length to that sort of arrangement. So
hard to sack your daughter.
Yeah, wow, and it happens. So Look, I don't know. That depends on the size and the structure of the business. We recommend people have a really structured acquisition and engagement and retention strategy, which means not necessarily the partner's next door neighbour's kid. But if that partner's next door neighbour kids turns out to be the right person for the role, that's fine. But I can imagine how that happens a lot in smaller, sort of privately owned firms. But
And Matthew, what are you saying in your world?
Look, I would say we would have at least 8 candidates either about to embark upon or midway through their professional year, and I can't think of any that I know of that have any form of family relationship or friendship or otherwise. There may be, but certainly they haven't come via that mechanism.
But you should. What is good though is if you can have your staff telling all of their friends that firm's a great place to work, that you want to bottle. Yep. So if you can get that sort of culture going in your firm, like large organisations spend a fortune becoming an employer of choice and building out that EVP. So if you can get your staff talking about what a great place to work is, you're winning.
A question over here?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, a lot of the banks, they used to do like a lot of graduate roles and they would take on the new person and train them and things like that. Now they've obviously left. Has anyone filled that void? Like I look at my brother, he started at a Big Four accounting firm. I started off at ANZ as an associate. Findex, do they take on graduates or?
Yep. So, that's a great question. And you mentioned when I was at uni, all of my mates were courted by the various Big Five, as it was at the time, to go and do audit work straight after university. But for those of us who did other degrees, it didn't happen. So, look, Findex, because we do have a large accounting side to our business, we have the relationships and the infrastructure already whereby we have roadshows at various universities each year. We have graduate programs. So our wealth division has now been able to tap into that such that we've now got, I think, as of next February, we'll have 12 graduates starting in our wealth team for the first time. So essentially, we're trying to fill that void because we know that, coming back to the stats that we were talking about beforehand, we want to be front of mind with that 150, go to find a job. And not too many of our competitors are probably out there or have the ability to go into a lot of the regional universities and so forth that we are to be able to get that brand awareness. So, yeah, certainly that is something that we're really trying to push strongly into.
Okay. Well, we're right on time. You any some closing comments on that whole scenario before we wind it up?
I just wanted to go back to those 190 students over 3 years at university. We're talking about 600,000 plus students that this profession's not seeing. And all of our role, I think, is to be telling everybody that will listen, what a great place it is to work. Whether it's an investment or financial advice, this whole industry needs more people, whether it's you and your brand and your the investment manager you work with, or XY advisor, or Striver, or Findex, or all the opportunities that are in this profession and the great thing this profession is doing, that we should be singing it from the rooftop. It's all of our responsibility as professionals, I believe.
Yep. And Matthew, yourself?
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, if you want relationships with people, this job is for you. If you want it with machines, perhaps it's not. But I think most people are intrinsically drawn to other humans. So there is certainly an attractiveness to this profession. I just think we collectively need to do a bit of a better job promoting ourselves, at that grassroots level.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think we're pretty much on time. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you, Matthew. Good to see you.